Every human has the opportunity to process their emotions, and it may take a while. But just rest assured, there is the end of the rainbow.
When I think about heroes, I think about parents of children on the spectrum. There are a lot of things my brain tells me are not true, and I do not have to pay that much attention to. It's there, but I choose what I pay attention to.
In part one of our episode, Fight for 15 Minutes Stress Management, we really talked about what stress is and how better to manage it so that we could be a better decision maker for ourselves and for our child. We also really talked about how to shift focus so we don't get stuck in the same thoughts that could slow us down and disempower us. In today's part two, we're really going to give you actionable tools so that after this episode, you have tools at your disposal to reduce stress, to be a better decision maker, to fight for those 15 minutes, to improve what's happening with you and your child. Watch till the end. Enjoy.
This might be very hard for parents who just got the autism diagnosis. And I think a lot of our parents who just got a diagnosis, something on their mind might be, why me? I just wanted to go away. I don't really like this autism thing you guys are talking about. I can understand how hard it is for us to talk about be present using breathing technique when all you want is autism goes away.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought it up because we just have to be mindful that there's just an acute pressure that's taking place with a mind going lots of direction. And this is where we recommend for those who are able to have therapy of any kind of their choosing. I think that that's helpful that way. And this is where we highly suggest if you are, a new mom and autism, everything is new and overwhelming, try to find a positive parent group in your community on Facebook. This allows you to really, you have so many thoughts, you have so many questions. There has to be some sort of process, whether you call it a grieving process, what it is a transition process. I think you are correct, Dr. Chen. We have to acknowledge that there's just so much happening at the same time. So what we're talking about is the protocols of getting back on track, but kind of realizing that every human has the opportunity to process their emotions, and it may take a while, but just rest assured there is the end of the rainbow. This is not a permanent feeling. It is a feeling in this current chapter. So I look at it as in the current chapter of just finding out, or you're just on a wait list for diagnosis, it's okay to feel all the feelings that you have. I think it's a recognition that there will be a chapter of action, and your opportunity is try to process as healthily as possible so you get to the point of doing action. And a lot of these tools are little small ways you can work closer to the action side of this chapter.
Well said. And if you are right now in chapter one, it's completely okay to think that I'm not ready to take a deep breath. I'm not ready to write journal to try any of the things you're writing, you're talking about. I'm just still in the stage of trying to figure out what happened to my child, what changed, what I did was wrong. And we know autism has nothing to do with parenting. And that has been debunked a long time ago. It allow yourself the space to grieve, allow yourself the space to process all these emotions. I think it's completely okay to say I'm not ready for practicing mindfulness. I'm not ready to, you know, make my brain to say, okay, I'm gonna go for a walk even though I'm stressed. It's complete okay. I think we just all have to go through the stages, all of us, at a different life chapter. And chapter one will eventually turn a page to chapter two, and then to chapter three, to chapter four, and then to a part that you can actually accept things that happen to you, to a child, to our life, and be able to say, well, it's too bad this happened, but I'm going to use my energy to find a plan, to make the plan happen.
Yes, I like how you talked about it in chapters, and this is kind of where the intent. You perfectly have to write. You have the right not to do all the activities, and whether it's a week, whether it's a month. I think the intent is trying to even write a day in the future to reevaluate how you feel, because it goes back to choosing the chapter to kind of sit in your energy and then evaluating. So if you're not ready for these things, that is perfectly fine. Put in the calendar 30 days from now. reevaluate, am I ready for the next chapter? If you're ready, then you can proceed. If not, that is still fine. Then put another date, 2 weeks, 30 days, because now it allows you to stay empowered to kind of choose. But I definitely like that. And maybe even for a future conversation, it's what do we do in chapter one? Because unfortunately, sometimes some people get stuck in chapter one and don't make it to chapter two. But just know that there is another chapter of action in this process, I think is the cathartic way to look at things. And even thinking about focus. So, a lot of times when any human feels overwhelmed, I always think focus on the next three things. Because sometimes it's so hard to think about all the other things that are going to take place and all the emotions that are feeling. Maybe the simple focus is make dinner, get the kids ready for bed, and watch one TV show, or just cry into a pillow, whatever that those three things are. But I think really trying to practice that shift of focus should always be present, because that is the path out. If you tell me what's the path out of chapter one, is kind of what we're talking about. How can I shift my focus from feeling all this pressure inside the hurricane to start to move through it so that I can be empowered to take action to give me and my child the best opportunity moving forward.
100%. In my own practice, even myself, I practice a lot of that idea of the drop in the anchor, right? Like the environment is just full of stress, and yourself is a boat, picture that. And then sometimes you just have to drop the anchor, means get yourself settled by shifting attention. And in the analogy of the book chapters, the first chapter is maybe you just recognizing the waves in your life. Notice that those are around you, those are not going away. And in chapter two, and start to figure out, okay, what can I do when the waves come? What are some things I can do to drop the anchor? Is that breathing? Is that just go out for a walk and or have someone take care of my kid for about 1 hour? I'll come back after have a cup of coffee and ready to go again. Maybe the third chapter is get yourself into a plan now and have that 5 for 15 minutes schedule. Monday I do this, Tuesday I do that. This is my weekly goal. These are three things I'm gonna do. As your child gets older, as you're more savvy about navigating all this stress and services, and then you're in chapter four, maybe you're in a position to help other parents to go through the similar journey. And I think the chapter five is the celebration, going looking back to what have happened, what you have done, what your child has come a long way. Those are, I call it celebration of yourself. Because when I think about heroes, I think about parents of children on the spectrum and the amount of strength, the amount of resilience. And it's not to say that, well, we have to do this. That might be true. But another part of the story is you have managed the stress. A lot of people have never thought about the amount of stress, but you have written this book from chapter one to chapter five. It's something that few of us can do and can handle.
I know there's research talking about the stress of special needs moms is
Mm-hmm.
equivalent to people that are in, war environments,
Mm-hmm.
and all that stress. And I like how you kind of broke it up in chapters so that no matter where you are in the journey, you can see the different paths to make it. And so I think that's a beautiful thing for all parents, especially parents with special needs. So as we continue with just kind of that stress management, let's just kind of give a list of tools. So no matter what chapter that you're in, you can try to leverage as many tools as possible. I guess from your standpoint, to go first, what tools, if you say your list of tools that you currently use for stress management?
So my top three is deep breathing. 2 minutes breathing. I, breathe in through my nose and breathe out through my mouth and just count that myself, like one, two, and give like 20 counts. And then that's my go-to breathing tool. And the second one I do is the name five things. My mind wanders a lot. And when that happens, I remind myself, like, what are the five things I can see? If I'm waiting for, say, getting a cup of coffee, instead of thinking about in that worry mode, what's on my to-do list? There's, oh man, I forgot to add that thing to the to-do list. Oh my gosh, I have to pick up my kid at 2 o'clock. And I just take deep breath and then start to tell myself, like, okay, what are the five things I see right now? And who are in front of me, the beautiful smile people have on their face, and be present at that moment and cherish that moment. The last thing I do, I'm big on routine. And there are days that I don't have enough time for my morning routine. I can tell you that day gonna go bad. So even I only have 10 minutes and I'm gonna use that 10 minutes, 2 minutes I do yoga and 3 minutes I make myself a cup of hot tea. And then for the remaining minutes, I read something and write down some thoughts and then set intention for that day. No, I talk to myself about like it's gonna be stressful. Every day is this way. But there are a lot of things my brain tells me are not true. And I do not have to pay that much attention to. It's there, but I choose what I pay attention to, which are the three big goals I have for that day, and then shift attention when I can.
I really like what you said there. I think for a lot of us to realize not everything our brain says is true. It sounds something so simple, but we sometimes think all of our thoughts are the reality in front of us. And the brain is a pattern seeking machine. So it's running lots of scenarios and simulations, but they're just simulation. And it could be catastrophic simulations, they could be positive, but those aren't the current reality. So I love those tools. I had to incorporate at least one of those myself. So for my tools of stress management, I'm a big walker. I think when in doubt, when I'm frustrated, I literally would just get out the door if possible and start walking. If I can't leave the environment, I'll start pacing in a positive way. And I'll couple that with some sort of music. Music to me is one of the best ways to shift your mindset. I mean, just imagine one song can make you cry, the next one can make you laugh, the third song can pump you up, and another song can chill you out. It's just so magical and it's universal. No matter what culture you're in, music is a great mind shifter. So, having a playlist, I think even before you get into these different areas, have a playlist for sad, have a playlist to get unstuck. And then, soon as you get into that space and the tea kettle rises, go right into it. So walking and music are things I like to use in conjunction. I do like to write. Of course, we wrote a book. So writing is something that writing out the thoughts, for me, writing is a form of meditation. It's allowing me to just write the thought without trying to judge the thought. And sometimes the thoughts are crazy, sometimes they're dumb, but they're just thoughts. And I'm just a big believer that thoughts are thoughts. It's what I decide what to do with them, impact how they affect me. And then I'm a big fan of trying to find the humor amongst the chaos because life sometimes will not make sense. I mean, humans as a species, we don't make sense. So in the middle of the chaos, if you can find the little bit of funny that's in the middle of the chaos. So it reminds me of a story of, the first kid that I worked with. And he just has this habit of wanting to play with water. And I don't know what it is, but he'll turn on the faucets and then, to the point where he'll flood the bathroom. And not fun, very expensive. But the way the parent told the story, it kind of felt like a comedy. She opens the door and the kid has a surprised look on his face and the water's going and,
No.
and you hear the dripping. And in some cases, just finding the humor in the midst of a chaotic story really changes just our thoughts about it moving forward. And that lesson stood out to me that a mom in a not fun moment found the funny in recalling that story. And sometimes that's the only control that we have is leveraging humor in a useful way. Those are things that I like to leverage. And just think about other ways, because there's lots of different ways to do it. Just having a stable person or two to talk about what's happening is very important. And I always think there's healthy vetting and there's unhealthy vetting or venting, sorry, and really try to find a healthy way to vent. So, just get a partner, maybe find another autism mom and say, let's try to call each other up at this time on Saturday when our kids are asleep. You vent for 10 minutes, I vent for 10 minutes, and we talk about
Mhm.
action plan. That might be a new way for fight for 15 minutes with a friend. But those are some of the things that can be used.
I really, really like the one you mentioned, calling a parent and then I talk to 5 minutes and then you listen to me and then validate the feeling. And then we, then we switch. And actually, there is a group in Germany that led by a neuroscientist, and she has have like three groups. One is a mindfulness, one is called compassionate group. And the idea is to, let's just manage our stress level. So in her experiment, and she showed that the compassionate group is the group that's most powerful in terms of reducing their stress. And what they did in the compassionate group is exactly what you mentioned. I called you for talk to you about 10 minutes, and I can tell you my life and how I'm struggling. And then as a human, you practice that compassionate listening. You validate and you listen to me, have someone just there without any judgment. And that actually in research, has shown to be very effective to reduce stress.
That is something even for us when we do our focus groups, is that's the reason why we like to put parents together so that they can share that information and then they're free to contact each other and kind of be that safety
Mhm.
valve. So that becomes a good objective, whether it's joining one of our future focus groups or finding your own person, have that way to vent, feel validated and practice listening. I think takes us, out of, the hurricane.
Yeah.
So, in this episode, just remember that stress is unavoidable. It's really how we manage it so that it doesn't overwhelm us. And so, for this week, your objectives is to find at least one or two stress related tools, whether you heard those through these podcasts or just anything in general, that allows you to continue to shift your focus and get you to the right space. So, remember to subscribe to the podcast, stay empowered, and we'll see you next time.